Hello, everybody. Rick Manning, President Americans for Limited Government here. Today, on Tuesday, May 9th, 2023, we are awaiting the beginning of the third round, what I would call the third round of a 10-round fight over the debt ceiling. And the first round was Joe Biden announcing that he was not going to waiver on debt ceiling, that he wanted a debt ceiling increase passed with no changes to spending policy or government policy, and not dealing with the out of control federal budget deficit at all. Round two was when Kevin McCarthy uh, defied a lot of expectations and the odds by being able to put together uh, the House Republicans, unify the House Republicans in favor of a debt ceiling reduction package that is pretty aggressive and in fact would make a measurable dent in the problem. It isn't this whole solution; it's a long way from it, but it is. It's actually doing something, and Joe Biden had bet that wouldn't be able to occur. In fact, Mitch McConnell didn't believe that McCarthy would be able to get that done. And the fact of the matter is, it was hard, but it got done. And a lot of you participated in that because when we sent out an action alert asking you to contact members of Congress, thousands of you replied and did so. And that's part of this process is how you get engaged in this. It's by going and contacting your members and shoring them up. Every pressure point in DC tends to be to keep spending, don't make any changes, status quo is fine. We'll continue. The people in DC sit there and they're like conductors on a train or engineers on a train who are looking ahead, and they see the tracks going on forever, and they don't realize that it only appears that the tracks are going on forever because they actually stop in the middle of a ravine, and you just go over the cliff, which is where we're heading with the debt, the national debt, which is at over $31 trillion now, projected to go to 50 trillion by 2033 by President Joe. So what do we expect from this meeting today, the third round, which is this meeting? It's going to be short and pretty anticlimactic in some ways. The meeting isn't just between Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden. It's got Hakeem Jeffries, who's the House Minority Leader, who has filed something called a discharge petition, which effectively allows for a majority of the House to sign on and force a bill to the floor. The discharge petition would be bringing a so-called a debt ceiling extension to the floor without making any changes whatsoever to U.S. policy, spending policy, which is the Democrats' position. And so that's what we're expecting from that. There is I think what you see, so he's going to be there. Mitch McConnell will be there, who has made it clear that this is a negotiation between Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden. And then you have, and Chuck Schumer's going to be there. And while he's supposedly said the same thing as McConnell, you can bet that he's going to chime in because some of his favorite sacred cows may be at stake. So here's what we need you to do. We've put on here at the very top of the chat. When you come in, if you go to the top of the chat, click on this salsa take action. And even if you've contacted Congress before on this, contact them again. It's critical that we let Congress know that we want them to support the Kevin McCarthy, the House Republican position. It's important that we do that because right now there's a lot of attention on it, and there's organized campaigns on the left screaming about all the cuts and everybody, how everybody in the world's going to get negatively impacted, and you need to extend this without doing anything. Quit playing politics with the debt ceiling, blah blah blah. And that's what Congress is going to be hearing. They need to hear from you right now, telling them that they need to put the country first and actually rein in this out of control budget. I know this isn't a sexy issue. We've spent a lot of time talking about it, but the fact of the matter is, folks, you are the difference makers on this. And simply by taking that link out of chat and clicking on it and taking action yourself, but then sharing it with as many of your friends as possible, because we need to get exponential growth out of this. We can't just have our universe doing this. We need to get it exponentially out there. And you have the capacity to do that. And it's in the news. It's going to be in the news, for the rest of this news cycle, for the next 12 hours. So now's the time when people are paying attention to it. And now's the time when you can make the biggest impact on it, simply by clicking and taking action and then sharing it with people. And obviously share this video because I think hopefully it'll be instructive. One of the interesting things about this is when you look at, I'm going to go through a couple of articles real quick. When you look at, this is from USA Today. It was from May 9 this morning. And President Biden's stance on spending cuts tested in debt ceiling meeting with McCarthy. Well, the fact is his press secretary says, the president's not going to change course here. We've been very, very clear. They need to do their job, meaning expanded, pass a debt ceiling that doesn't deal with any of the problems. Karine Jean-Pierre wasn't around, more likely, when she probably wasn't around at all in 2009. I don't think she was in the political realm then. When Joe Biden was the lead negotiator for Barack Obama on the debt ceiling increase, when they negotiated with Congress, or 2011, when Joe Biden was the lead negotiator for Barack Obama, when they came up with the direct spending was directly in the crosshairs, and spending cuts got made, and Joe Biden negotiated it. So this idea that Joe Biden, we never did negotiate the debt ceiling, it's just flat out lie. The whole reason the debt ceiling exists is so we can have a conversation about our national debt and try to do something about it. It's the one time we actually focus on how much money we spend that we don't have. So the whole concept behind, just keep kicking the can down the street and ignore it, that's exactly counter to why the entire debt ceiling exists. And Joe Biden knows that. He knows that. I mean, he's negotiated these things before. On the Senate side, he voted against extending the debt ceiling about 9 times or something. So he's been all over the place on this. He votes against it when it makes sense for him to vote against it. He votes for it when it makes sense for him to vote for it, depending on who's pushing it. And bottom line is, this is all political posturing, which is why I say it's round 3. But understand that Jean-Pierre kind of accused the Republicans of manufacturing a crisis when it was Joe Biden who came up and said, we got a debt ceiling and we need to pass a quote unquote clean bill, and then refused to meet with Kevin McCarthy for months. The House passes a bill to raise the debt ceiling. The House has passed a bill to raise the debt ceiling. You won't learn that from the mainstream media very easily, but the House has actually done their job. They have passed a bill to pass a clean debt to pass a debt ceiling. They've done that. Now there's conditions, like you have to cut the budget. You have to do a few things to make it so we don't hit the new debt ceiling as rapidly as we would have. But they've passed a bill to raise the debt ceiling. That bill's pending in the Senate. Joe Biden can tell the Senate, pass the bill, send it to my desk. Could do that tomorrow. So there's lots of things going on. So Jean-Pierre's just kind of out to lunch, but bottom line is she's not very, she's really taking the line of, we're not going to negotiate. But the truth is the pressure has been growing on Biden to bend, as they say in debt ceiling talks. And a later article than this one, a later article than this one, talked about how a lot of Democrats are now pressuring Biden to bend on the debt ceiling talks. The reason is kind of is political. And the political reason is very simply, there's a Washington Post poll, which I just need to accept apparently some of these cookies here. There's a Washington Post poll that shows that Trump's leading Biden by 7 points. in a hypothetical matchup, 49-42. DeSantis also leads Biden 49-42. Biden has this problem. Nobody thinks he's a leader. When you sit there and say, you don't have an answer, you just say, oh, just continue doing the same stupid thing you've been doing for the last 40 years that got us into this problem. It's clear that when that's your answer, then people say, well, I don't want to do that. So what does that mean? So we take a look at the polling. This is Washington Post ABC News poll. So, far right conspiracy, this poll. And it shows that he's in real trouble. He's in real trouble. And and there's a whole bunch of attributes. They don't do anything they don't really ask any questions that they're publishing here dealing with the debt ceiling. But it's all about fitness for office and whether or not you're who's going to be more or less effective as president. So and right now, Washington Post ABC News says Donald Trump leads 49-42 against Biden. That's disastrous for Joe Biden, and it weakens his position going into this negotiation. And the left knows it. But what even makes their position harder is because Biden's position harder is because the Senate Republicans did something that I didn't think they'd do. I've criticized them over the last 3 weeks about failing to act and leaving Kevin McCarthy kind of out on a limb. But we had Senator James Langford on talking about this a couple of days ago, and I'd encourage you to go and check that out because he was very informative about kind of what's going on in the fight. But short on the heels of that, Senator Mike Lee, a good friend from Utah, announced that he had 43 Senate Republicans signing a letter that says, for all intents and purposes, it says that they're not going to advance any bill that raises the debt ceiling without substantive spending and budget reforms. The 43 Senate Republicans include Mitch McConnell, who'll be in the room with the president and McCarthy today, affirming that he's on McCarthy's side. Because here's what the White House figured: they figured they could cut off support in the Senate and isolate the House Republicans, and then put pressure on the weakest members of the House, of the herd in the House, to then sign on to the discharge petition, and because you need 218 votes, pass what Biden wants, which is to do nothing, and send it to the Senate, be able to pass it in the Senate, and roll Kevin McCarthy and effectively end Kevin McCarthy's speakership. That's what they've been trying to set up. Kevin McCarthy surprised them because he's proved to be very strong. And Mike Lee came around, and along with others, but Mike Lee led the charge on this. He got 43 Republican senators say, we're not going to support, doing nothing related to the debt ceiling. And what that told Biden is his entire legislative strategy collapsed. His entire legislative strategy of trying to utilize the Senate, his Senate relationships, and isolate the House Republicans has actually consolidated the congressional House and Senate into a solidified party of people who are going to now fight for lowering the size of government, and use this as a tool to be able to win back some things that were lost when Biden shoved this $1.7 trillion spending extravaganza down their throats. So that puts Biden in an extraordinarily bad position because his whole Stonewall strategy is now collapsed. And he faces polling, which shows he's in trouble politically. And the fact that Mike Lee and came together and Mitch McConnell, who Mike Lee did not support for majority leader. In fact, Mike Lee got punished for opposing his majority leader being a minority leader, rather, McConnell being minority leader. He got punished. He got sent off committees that he's really good at, off to a less important committee. But, one of the things you want to avoid in life is give really smart people time to do really smart things. And that's what effectively happened because time isn't being taken up on a lot of extra committee work. Mike Lee now got to be industrious and have his staff focus on this and tackling a really important issue and being the kind of the bringing it together, which Mike Lee in the past has not been able to do so because he takes hard positions that others aren't willing to take. On this one, he got people together. And so the Senate now is a lock solid ally with Kevin McCarthy and the House to try to drive down the spending. This is phenomenal news, and it puts tremendous pressure on Biden. And but the piece that we can't miss, once again, I'm just going to go back to this because it's really important. The piece that we can't, darn, that doesn't have what I wanted on it. The piece we can't miss on this is that you are the essential component that makes this whole thing work. The people weighing in right now, the next 24 hours, the next 12 hours anyway, beating the heck out of the Congress saying, cut spending now. That's incredibly important. Every pressure point in Washington, D.C. says, expand spending, expand government, expand government. It's like a drumbeat in here. So the heartbeat of DC is, we need to grow, we need to grow, we need to grow. It's only you that stand in the way. So share the take action, which is at the top of the chat list, and share share this video if you feel inclined. Share the video with Senator Langford. Explains it really, really well, because we need people informed and we need people active. We need them active now, because what members of Congress are hearing tonight and throughout this meeting they're having, what they hear is what they're going to take away in terms of what the public sentiment is. And all the momentum we've gained to get to this point can be lost if people don't jump into this. So I can't be more emphatic. This is incredibly important. I'm going to take look at some what people are saying. Well, here's an interesting. Yes, go ahead, raise it already. Can't even pay the interest rate now. Bankruptcy coming. Ronnie, that's it. Bankruptcy may be coming, but we are paying the interest rate now, the interest payments now. They are, as we've written, check out Robert Romano's articles on this, but the one that came out today or yesterday, I don't remember which, I think it was yesterday, was pretty direct on it. But we also have a statement that if you go to getliberty.org on the current interest payments on the debt, you can go there and you can see that, the projection is for the next 10 years under Biden's assumptions is that we're going to end up paying $1 trillion a year on average for interest payments on the debt alone. So it's the bottom line is no one thing is we didn't get into this problem through one stupid act. It was a series of stupid acts, all kind of just building blocks on top of one another. We're not going to reverse that with one fell swoop. We're going to reverse it by doing two things. We're going to reverse it by keeping the growth of the government to a minimum, and B, when we talk about this bill, we forget that the last word in the title of the bill is grow. And one of the things that this bill does is it puts the regulatory regime of the Biden administration and as a whole under scrutiny of Congress, and allows for, through something called the REINS Act, and allows for regulations that strangle the economic growth in America, can be countermanded by a vote of Congress very easily without needing a presidential signature. So things that have a high cost, regulations that have a high cost, Congress gets to review them under the REINS Act, which is part of the House package. We have to be able, if you're looking at this from a straight money perspective, it's hard to find a way out of cutting enough government to get rid of this, because quite honestly, there's too many programs that cost a lot of money that people aren't going to want to have cut. You can say, okay, well, we're going to cut Social Security by 50%. We're going to cut Social Security benefits by 50%. We can cut Medicare benefits by 50%. We can do those kind of things. But that won't work. We know that won't work. We know people won't accept that. So you have to. So what do? We have to grow out of it. And the way you grow out of it is you get the government out of everybody's hair, and you let us start growing. Let's produce energy again. Let's be an economic superpower that makes things here. Let's continue the Trump policies that were designed to bring our manufacturing sector home, to create jobs that actually paid real wages, to increase the average wages of people beyond what the inflation rate was, which was occurred during the Trump administration. And the first 3 months of the Biden administration, real wages were higher than inflation. After that, because of Biden's inflation and spending and craziness, wages went this way and inflation went this way. And suddenly people were you're working harder to make less in real dollars, post-inflation dollars. So we have to restore the productivity process where we're producing stuff, but we're producing it for cheaper than it would cost. And we're going to do that through AI. We're going to do it through a lot of things that are kind of scary if they're not kept under some wraps. But we're going to do it because we're the most innovative country in the world. The reasons, you know why Henry Ford became Henry Ford? Because he figured out a way to build a car cheaper. Because he put assembly lines together where every car wasn't custom made, but instead you had a system where everybody had a job. They weren't all doing every job. Everybody had a job. They did that job. They did that job well, and we produced high quality vehicles en masse, which lowered the cost of vehicles so people could then afford to buy a car. That's what Henry Ford did. He didn't invent a car. He invented the assembly line to construct a car, which created massive productivity gains, which lowered the cost for you and I to buy cars back in, not me, but maybe, I guess none of us were alive when this occurred, but made the Model A, and Model T affordable for the average person. That's what Henry Ford did. He allowed for mass production. He increased productivity. We have to get the stupid regulators in Washington, D.C. out of the game as much as possible so we can increase the productivity of Americans, and we can create an environment where the stuff gets made here, it gets made better here, it gets made cleaner here, and it gets made cheaper here because we figure out ways to make it cheaper here. It doesn't mean cut wages. It means figure out how to create increased productivity. And with the tools, the new computer and IT and AI and robotics that exist, we're going to figure that out. We're going to break that code, and we're going to become the most productive country in the world if we just get our government out of the way. So and when that occurs, we'll grow. And when we grow, more taxes will come in. Not by raising taxes, simply by, if you keep them at the same rate, more tax dollars will be generated because more wealth will be generated. And lo and behold, that's the way we find our way out. If we continue to stagnate, if our country's economy stagnates the way Japan has, Europe has, because their governments won't get out of the way, then no, you're right. 100% correct, Ronnie. We're dead. At some point, we're dead. That's why we have to win this fight now. This is our time to make this fight. And we'll win or we'll lose. But no, you never won. Nobody ever won a fight by rolling on their back, put their paws in the air, and exposing their belly to the enemy. And we're not going to do that either. So join the fight in a positive way. Go to the Salsa Labs thing. We've got it once again. Here it is. Opportunity. Go there, click on it, and share. And the thing that any of you who are in Utah, or if you feel so inclined, that we're going to I'm going to ask, we're going to put up the letter that was signed, or you can go to Senator Mike Lee's Senate website, and he's got the letter up, and it has the names of the members, the Republicans that signed it. 43 Republicans signed it, and a couple didn't sign it for what Lee called strategic reasons. Contact those Republicans who signed it and thank them. That's a really important thing. Contact those Republicans who signed it and thank them. I mean, Senator Lee did such a great job. Mitt Romney did not endorse Senator Lee, who's also from Utah, for his reelection last year. But yet Mitt Romney is quoted on this fight that is frustrating. The White House has refused to negotiate. Well, you know what? If we got Mitt Romney, they're in deep trouble. So let's just thank those who have taken a step, who's taken a stand. Let's reinforce it for them, and let's just keep fighting. We'll see what happens at 4 o'clock. I don't want to take too much of your time, but that's where we're at. There's an opportunity to make a difference. Please share, share, share. That's what matters. Share this stuff and get involved, and we will win this fight. We'll keep you updated on what happens. We'll see what the aftermath is. If it's warranted, we'll come on tomorrow about that. But I suspect tomorrow we're going to come on and talk a little bit about what James Comer from the House Government Reform or Oversight and Accountability Committee has come up with regarding some of then Vice President Biden's actions when he was busy, when it appears as though he was busy having relatives collect money around the world while he was serving as vice president. But we'll find out what actually is there. Not prejudging it at all, but tomorrow's going to be firework full. So we'll probably be talking about that. I'm trying to get a special guest on about it, but right now, I think it'll be a really interesting subject. With that, I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you very much. And we just keep fighting.